Hey folks, me Josh here. Been a long time since I posted anything. Yeah, frankly, I have not posted because I paused on the trapping for a little while. This was intending to just be like a short pause, but I just couldn't get back into it. Got busy with work, had to travel for work to Texas and a whole bunch of stuff. Got sick with my kids. My kids got sick. I got sick again. So yeah, didn't get to do a ton of trapping, but I wanted to make this video of lessons learned for this season. So this is technically my first trapping season where I have trapped specifically for fur purposes. In the past, I have trapped for like nuisance trapping just to get rid of the animals, but I've never actually trapped for fur. And I wanted to just jot down a couple lessons that I learned during this season, during my first season here. So that's kind of the plan. I'm also cleaning up a lot of my traps, kind of getting things ready for storing for the winter. So yeah, going to be kind of talking while I do that. So let's start off with lesson number one. Well, I would say for my first lesson I learned, well, you should have better organization, but that's not one of the lessons that I'm going to talk about today. One thing I really wish I had spent more time doing this for trapping was to actually do more scouting in the off season, or even just early season. I think I really missed an opportunity for beavers specifically. The pond froze up on me before I could really get an idea where the beavers were swimming. So I found what I believe is their lodge, but then the ice froze up so thick, so quickly. This was a pretty cold winter, a pretty unprecedented winter, but it froze up so quickly, I didn't know where the beaver channels were. I cut holes all over the pond, all over the place, trying to figure out, find shallow areas. The way the ice froze, thank you, just living your best life. The way the pond froze, I just wasn't able to figure out where the beavers were running. So I wasted a lot of time in the winter cutting holes in ice, putting traps down into a frozen pond to not find any. It was really disheartening. And when it freezes like that, the only thing you can really trap are coyotes and beaver. Because the raccoons aren't generally moving too much. Neither skunk or anything like that. So you can focus on fox, coyotes, and beaver. Without being able to trap beaver, and the property owner asked me not to trap coyotes, I was kind of stuck. So that was part of the reason I pulled all my traps. I couldn't find the beavers. I went to other locations, and the way the ice froze this year is too bubbly. Everything was all bubbled over. You couldn't figure out where everything was. So that's my first lesson. I really wish I'd spent more time scouting. I did not do that. I did not take advantage of that. So that'll be something I do next year. Well, my next lesson I learned is I did not have the proper equipment. No, I had most of the proper equipment, but I was missing some essentials. And this kind of ties in with the next point. I didn't have a good fur plan. Just didn't. I don't know why, but I thought skinning the animals was going to be a lot quicker than it was. I thought I could just kind of wing it. It wasn't the case. So what I did was I made my own gambrel for holding up the animals. I set it up in my garage. It worked for really big beavers because the gambrel I made was really large. But it was just with 550 cord and a big long 2x4, and I could have shortened the 2x4, but then it'd have several gambrels. It didn't work. It wasn't a very efficient process. So I didn't have the right equipment. I didn't have the proper equipment to really skin an animal effectively. Like having a gambrel would have been good. Didn't have it. That was one of the pieces of equipment I didn't have. Another piece of equipment I didn't have was an easily carryable 22. I had a 22 rifle, and that works fine. But when you have to trek like a good distance, in this case, you know, about a mile, just to get to my first trap, having something that you can carry really easily, like a pistol 22, would have been beneficial. I didn't get one till towards the end of the season, you know, but or at least when I stopped trapping. So by then it wasn't really useful. So I didn't quite have the right equipment. Like I said, that kind of ties into my point about having a good fur plan. I didn't have a good fur plan. Like I said, I was hoping I could just figure out how to skin them and stretch them and just kind of do it. Turns out that was not the case. I never had the time to do it. So I was able to skin the animals, but then I had all these furs. What do I do with the furs? I didn't have any space for them, so I had to put them in the freezer. And we have a limited freezer space. That kind of ties in. I didn't have the proper equipment. I needed another freezer. On top of that, I didn't have the proper stretching stuff. I didn't have a fleshing beam figured out yet. So, and yeah, because of that poor fur planning, trapping was becoming really stressful. I had a pile up of inventory of skins, and I'm like, what do I do with these? I didn't even have that many. I only had like 6 animals at one point, you know, but it's like, what do you do with them? I didn't have a good fur plan. Set up a good fur plan. So next year, plan is I'm going to buy myself a Cambrel, buy several wire stretchers, have a flesh beam set up so that I can stretch my skins. What I ended up doing was I skinned the animals and then I just sold the furs as is. I got pennies for them. I mean, it was a huge beaver I trapped, 44 pounds or whatever it was. I got $5 for it. You know, that's tough. I guess that's a lesson learned too. There's not a lot of money in trapping. Not that I thought there was, but yeah, I mean, it was without a proper fur plan, you build up stress and it becomes a not fun process. So that's one of my lessons learned. All right, next lesson learned. I did not have a good method of transporting animals. Now, I thought I had a good idea for it. It just didn't quite work out the way I planned. So I drive a 2016 Toyota 4Runner. Now, it's 4-wheel drive. You can get me basically anywhere. It's a good vehicle, very utilitarian. I really love it. Always have. Now, the issue with it is you start loading up all your trapping gear, and you'd be surprised at how much trapping gear you need. I mean, I had a 27-gallon tote filled with traps, filled with lure, filled with tools, sticks, whatever I needed. Had everything. Now, problem was when I had all that loaded in there, all of a sudden, I didn't have any space to get for animals. The reason being is I have 2 kids, so my 2 back seats are filled with car seats and kid stuff. So my little back area had no space. So what was happening is I would catch, you know, a beaver or a raccoon and a beaver or whatever. I'd get back to my car. I'd throw that I'd have to throw the animal on top of all my gear, you know, and it just was not very conducive. Did not work very well. So that's definitely a lesson learned. I need a better method of transporting the animals. Getting the animals back to my car, not really an issue. I just, you know, dragged it with me. I suppose if I had more animals, it'd be more of an issue. You know, if I trapped 6 or 7 raccoons, for instance. But I don't mind walking a little extra, you know. So, but yeah, actually getting the animals to my house was definitely a challenge. So next year, what I'm going to do is get one of those little like hitch carriers. That way I can just throw it right on the back of the hitch. Whatever animals I catch, I can strap them down and just bring them back. That way they're outside of the car too. They're not getting blood and smell all over my vehicle. Because I'm not going to lie, my kids kept questioning, hey, what's that smell, Dad? You know, I didn't really want to let them know that it's just oozing, you know, beaver castor oozing out of the big beaver I caught the night before. So there was a lesson learned. Last lesson learned. Did not have a winter trapping plan. I don't know why it never occurred to me that trapping in the winter would be different than trapping in the fall. You'd think that would logically cross somebody's mind, but it did not. What I mean by that is, what are you doing? Huh? What are you doing, Gita? What I mean by that is the ground started freezing up, and I had all my traps set up for earth anchors. Not really thinking that once I drove those earth anchors into the ground, if that ground froze, there was no digging up those earth anchors, not until it thawed out. Never thought about that. So all of a sudden, you know, I had all these traps set out, and I had no way of pulling them out. Fortunately, I recognized my risk there early on. So when the ground officially froze, right? Sorry, I actually stopped recording. What I stopped there was saying fortunately I found that the ground was starting to freeze, so I only had to leave 2 earth anchors behind. Not too shabby. I'm going to go back there in the spring and pull them out once it warms up here. But it was not something I planned, not something I even thought about. You know, I know people use like draggers and stuff like that for coyotes, and, you know, tie them off to a tree, or just come back in the spring and just kind of clip, you know, grab their chains and everything like that. But it was just not something I ever thought about. So for next year, it'll be something I have to think about, marking the locations, you know, using maybe cable rather than chain. That way I'm not wearing out using up all my chain for leaving those over spring, or until spring, excuse me. So yeah, I mean, so those are some lessons. And like I said, this is my first season doing it like for fur, where I'm actually doing it as a hobby rather than just kind of out of necessity. And honestly, it was a blast. I really enjoyed it. I really wish I had something done more trapping this winter, because it was so much fun. I loved getting out in the mornings. I loved walking around checking those traps. I loved, like, seriously, like, even if I didn't trap anything for like 2 or 3 days, 4 days, it didn't matter. I was so happy just to be outside and enjoying the world, enjoying the outdoors, enjoying, you know, what God gave us to go enjoy. It was really special. So no, I plan to trap a little bit more here once it starts warming up. In Minnesota here, the beaver season goes a little later, I think till May or something like that. So I'm going to be trapping more beavers once it warms up, but mainly I'm targeting them for meat, because I really like beaver meat. Super good. Highly recommend it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a wrap for the season. Not a super successful season by any means, but for me, for a first time doing this, like really doing it, I'm really happy with it, you know? So, I mean, I got a plan for next year. I know what I'm going to do, got some ideas, and I'm really excited for it. So anyway, that's my spiel. I'll probably have a couple more videos here for beaver trapping, you know, later on here, just doing caster mountain sets and stuff like that. But yeah, probably won't hear from me for a while. So anyways, thanks for coming along with me, and talk to y'all next time.